Yeah, working on it.
Okay.
So many windows. That was such a fun seal pod today. It was so fun. I had such a good time. Hey, Colleen. Hey, Hadley. Thank you so much for coming.
Yay.
Welcome.
Can you guys hear audio? Just confirm.
Yes.
There's classical music playing and people occasionally talking.
Yep, perfect. This is a piece we'll begin talking about in a few minutes.
Is this for the meditation thing?
Yes, it is.
Nice. I listened to it when you mentioned it. I liked it.
It's a spectacular piece. I was just playing it a little while ago and just marveling at its architecture.
How many first chairs do you have now, Matthew?
We have named, well, we've raised $31,000 through the first chair program. And that doesn't equate to 31 seats though. It equates to about 24, 25, I believe.
Great.
So we're well into the third row, which is what we're going to be talking about in a little bit. Yeah. It's really great. It's been a humbling and very exciting month. Very great start to the year.
Technical difficulties.
Hi, Nancy. We can see your stripes.
Hi. Hello.
Hey,
I'm sorry about that. I'm trying to figure out what the heck I'm doing, but I think I got it now. And once again, I can't put the group on my screen.
Because we're in presentation mode.
Okay. Nice music, Matthew.
Yeah, we're going to talk about this particular piece in a little bit because it's a great metaphor for what we're doing.
Cool.
And I figured we're a musical organization. We should start these things with a little bit of music.
Bless you.
Thank you. And by the way, Dave is here with me. He's behind me at his desk.
Oh, hey there, Dave.
Hi, Matthew.
Yipping.
And like usual, we'll just give this a couple of minutes before I dive in.
Okay, and the Zoom goes to that network. Thanks, Kate.
This melody you're listening to, I'll talk about it more in a few minutes, but it's just little pieces of a major scale. That's it. It's just little tiny chunks. Hey, Billy.
Hi, everyone.
Just give it like maybe another minute.
You know, Matthew, here where we are, it's an hour later than you guys.
Oh.
So as you can imagine, I really love our morning 7:30 meetings when they happen because it's 8:30 here.
Yeah. No, I've made it harder for you to come back.
I know. Yeah. But so I ran in from doing errands. I go, come on, Dave, hurry up. It's going to be 5:30 in a few minutes. And then I sat down and I thought, wait a minute. It's only 4:30 in Union.
Okay, so before I get started, I just want to ask everybody to turn their ears on and just pay a little attention to this music for about 30 seconds, because I'm going to talk about it in a second as a metaphor for what we're doing. But listen to how spare it is. You know, it's the most minimal amount of architecture that you can imagine. Hey, Heidi.
Hi there, how are you?
Good, how are you?
I'm doing well.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay, I think on that climactic note, let's go ahead and pause the music. All right, so welcome everybody. And again, thank you so much for joining tonight. Once again, we have a lot to get through and I'm promising to keep these to 30 minutes. So I'm going to talk really, really fast, but you all have my contact information. And so feel free if there's any questions, or I'm going to hang out afterwards if there's any questions or discussion, but I just want to respect everybody's time. Okay, next slide. So since we're a musical organization, I want to start starting these events with a little bit of music. So what you've been listening to is a piece called Spiegel am Spiegel, or The Mirror, or The Mirrors in the Mirror. And I was just talking about its very spare architecture. There is nothing extraneous. If you take one thing away, you take one note away, and it wouldn't work. It's literally just an arpeggiated chord. Just a really simple arpeggiated chord, you know, with little snippets of the F major scale on top. Which I have to admit, like, to use such the bare minimum of musical elements to create a 9-10 minute piece that is listenable to and that takes you on a journey is really, I mean, that's some amazing craftsmanship. And so I want to tell you a little bit about the composer. His name is Arvo Pärt. And has anybody ever heard of Arvo Pärt? It's amazing. He, for the most of the last 20 years, has been the #1 performed classical composer in the world. He shifts #1 versus #2 with John Williams of Star Wars and E.T. fame. They normally take turns being #1, #2. Right now it's John Williams #1, Arvo Pärt #2. So he's Estonian, born in 1935. And as you can hear, he's very minimalist, but very, very different from what you think of in terms of minimalism, in terms of Philip Glass. And he composed this piece after a 10-year depression, basically. He started composing in the early to mid 60s, really got into mysticism and sacred music, composed his first hit piece, which was a sacred piece, which is not something you're supposed to do behind the Iron Curtain. And he dealt with a lot of flack for that, so much so that he stopped composing for 10 years. This is one of the things that sort of brought him back out of that. And I love this quote: "I had to get rid of everything unnecessary in order to save myself." I think that's kind of the experience of living through the pandemic, right? So it points, what I love this too, there's the quote that's up in front of you of his: "This music is about the silence. The sounds are there to surround the silence." And so this is something that's so in line with what the kids in our little classes, the Sound Scholar classes, are learning right now. They're learning about notes and rests. So defined periods of sound and defined periods of silence. And what I love about Parrot's craftsmanship is that he's actually using the silence as his musical medium. The notes are just there to frame the silence for you. And with that in mind, it's really fun to listen to different recordings of this. There are many arrangements of it too. There's classical guitar versions. There's I think a saxophone version I was hearing yesterday, but most of them will be piano with a violin or piano with a cello. And normally you don't hear color changes in a string instrument unless you're hearing the entire section. But on this, it's so spare. You can really hear the technique of individual string players. Some will be exactly what we heard, which is a nice balance of the airiness of the instrument with its tinniness and its point. But there are others that it's just so frosty and cloudy and foggy, and it's all just different ways to play with the colors, and I just love that. So I'm introducing you to this piece tonight for a couple of reasons. One, I love Arvo Pärt, and for what it's worth, he's a lovely, 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 kind man. But this work is going to be featured in a new monthly live event we're launching on March 1st at noon, which is National Therapeutic Music Day. We're calling it Lunch and Listen. And it's just going to be a simple little musical meditation for about 15 to 20 minutes. There'll be 3 to 5 minutes of welcome and grounding and ear preparation. And then there'll be 8 to 15 minutes of some sort of musical journey. And so you're invited to come with your cameras off just for a midday break and to learn something new. But I also think that this piece is wonderful because it's an ideal musical example of what we're doing at Great Bend, where Arvo Pärt is using the notes as a container for intentional or very musical silence, something that would be near impossible to appreciate in any other way. We are using music as a container to develop and deliver community development strategies that generate things that are also intangible, like a sense of place or a sense of connection and belonging or community pride, things that are really hard to intentionally just sort of take out of a box and hand to a community. And so it's sort of serving double duty there as a nice little intro to what we're talking about tonight. All right, Amber, next slide, please. All right, so I'm just going to run through a quick agenda of what we're doing tonight. Here are just the high points. One, I just wanted to start with any questions or reflections from the gatherings we had last month, and I'll stop in a second for that. Two, I want to talk a little bit more about the next opportunity we're pursuing, which is therapeutic music as a natural resource export. Then I've got a bunch of capital project updates for you all. And then, of course, some calls to action in terms of how you can help and saving some dates. So with that in mind, any brief, quick questions or reflections from last? Mike's already asked a couple, and I'm going to revisit those. But anything else that anybody wants to sort of bring up? Anything you've thought of in the last month? All right, terrific. Then I'm going to race ahead because, again, I want to respect people's time. And I so appreciate that you're here. Okay, next slide. So in our first meeting, I've been talking a lot about, again, music as a natural resource and music's potential as Mason County's next major natural resource export. And again, this is one of Mason County's superpowers. We are so good at stewarding natural resources and then using them in a sustainable way. So this, our explorations in therapeutic music, which you're about to hear about, builds on our successes delivering evidence-based educational programs, especially in the early childhood space, in a sustainable way. So you've already heard about the little live event and podcast we're launching, but the big project we've been working on for several months now is something called Memory Care Choir. And it's based on basically an on-demand version of the program that I was running at Alpine Way pre-pandemic. So Memory Care Choir is exactly what you'd think it is. It's a musical experience, usually held in a weekly sing-along kind of atmosphere that is specifically evidence-based in modalities that are meant to work with folks that are suffering with dementia. It's very simple, but it's got really powerful effects fairly immediately. There's some great documentaries about this. Oliver Sacks was very passionate about this in his work. But there are a couple of things I want to highlight. there are substantial reductions in agitation and conflict, which is one of the more challenging aspects of working with dementia patients. There are substantial affective improvements, particularly in anxiety and depression. And those improvements are not only for those suffering with dementia, but they've been measured as well for their family, caregivers, and staff. And then there are, of course, cognitive improvements in terms of improved lucidity for most of the participants that participate in these sorts of programs. I have been talking about music's economic impact, so I want to tie that all in, because all of those effects lead to significant double-digit reductions in overhead for memory care facilities, as well as improved quality of life and satisfaction for patients and caregivers and families. So particularly, again, in staff. So it also reduces turnover. So it's a workforce development perk as well. So what we've been really thinking about, since we've had so much success with on-demand early childhood education, is how we can sort of deliver this sort of thing in an on-demand way. And we're really excited about it. So a couple of things that an on-demand sort of streaming version of Memory Care Choir would make possible is, one, it's easier to make it part of a daily routine, which means you don't have to wait for a musician to show up once a week. It could really be at 9 o'clock in the morning. We do this every morning. It's Memory Care Choir at this point. So that makes the benefits available much more consistently. And we think, there's never been a study on this, we think that will improve the windows of lucidity and reductions of agitation and make them more constant rather than coming in and out based on their exposure to this kind of musical process. The other thing that an on-demand model makes possible is that we're not only capable of serving memory care facilities in this way, but we're also capable of serving families directly. And so with one sort of bell or bat, we sort of hit a number of different marks, which is really kind of exciting. So what's also interesting for us is its sustainability in terms of Great Bend. It provides, one, another opportunity for us to do applied research and publish about that, but also this is a potential income stream for us via an affordable subscription model. So like imagine Netflix, we could provide this in that kind of model in a very cost-effective way, make it very available. But again, there's one state, Wisconsin, Wisconsin and Minnesota are really experimenting with this. They have a little bit of a light program. It's not on demand, it's not virtual. They have people actually going. Or whatever, but those two states have really taken this over and they've really seen substantial improvements. We think a more research-based approach and an on-demand model could be even more powerful. So get ready for more news about that. I'll just put in a note that what's holding us back most right now, we have it programmed, we have it planned, we even have our test site partners all lined up. What's holding us back right now are some hardware upgrades that we need to fund in order to facilitate production amongst all my staff, but we're working on that. So that's just a little tip about our next natural resource export. Okay, next slide. So now the first round of capital project updates. So first, a note about who you're seeing on this screen. This is Gustavo Dudamel. And if you don't know who he is, he's probably the hottest conductor in the world right now and probably has been for the better part of the last 15 years at least. I'm going to read the first paragraph of his bio. He's thrilling to watch. He's just great. Gustavo Dudamel is driven by the belief that music has the power to transform lives, to inspire, and to change the world. Through his dynamic presence on the podium and his tireless advocacy for arts education, Dudamel has introduced classical music to new audiences around the globe and has helped provide access to the arts for countless people in underserved communities. I'm going to talk about how he does that. As the music and artistic director of the Los Angeles Philharmonic, now in his 13th season, Dudamel's bold programming and expansive vision led the New York Times to herald the LA Phil as the most important orchestra in America, period. And I think they're right. So the other thing that's really interesting about Dudamel is that he's from Venezuela and he was part of the first generation of kids to come up through El Sistema, which if you were part of the January events, you know that it's our version, our more research-based version of that, in fact, that is the foundation of our Sound Scholar early childhood program. And so he has been this huge advocate for how powerful that was for him, lifting him out of poverty, making this available to him. And he's sort of the lead in terms of all of the major symphony orchestras in America having some sort of local El Sistema partner. So with that just sort of in mind in terms of in the background, so I want to talk about first chairs, and I want to start with some of the questions that we've gotten in the last month. So the first one is, are first chair gifts capital contributions or are they operating contributions? And I want to make it really clear, first chair gifts are capital contributions. They're there to help us build the building. So they will be underwriting the next phase of tasks to move forward. Those are things like land acquisition, conversion of the site study to actual building plans, any civil engineering studies and planning, and all of the coordination that my team needs to do to make all of that happen. So I didn't talk about this last month because it felt premature, but it's not premature now, 30 some odd $1,000 later. This is the first step in our goal to raise $2 million. And that's a very specific figure, and I want to explain why. There's a program that is called Building for the Arts in the Department of Commerce that provides $2 million reimbursement grants specifically for building arts facilities like the ones we are outlined. And right now I can tell you, I've been working with Inspire Washington quite a bit, advocating over the last couple of weeks. And right now there's a particular focus in making sure those funds are channeled towards underserved rural communities, which I'm really, really excited about. That program is currently being discussed and debated at the Capitol for a program expansion, which is really, really great. So it was already well funded. It's about to get another big chunk of funding. When you see Drew McEwen, thank him for his vote and his support on the Appropriations Committee for that. And when you see Tim Sheldon, please communicate your support to him. Tell him you're supporting what Great Bend is doing and ask him to support this when the Senate version of the bill comes up, which I think is next week or the week after. And similarly, Dan Griffey voted in favor for this as well. So please thank him when you see him as well. This is a really exciting thing. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in a second. The next question I'm going to address is the question that Mike opened the evening with, which is how many rows of chairs have been named to date? And that's not as easy to answer because we haven't decided yet how many chairs are in a row, but for a 500-seat theater, we think it's probably going to be about 12 chairs per row, which means we're nearly through the third row already, which is amazing and not what we were anticipating in January, and really, really exciting. So if you'll remember from last month, we have a matching fund of $50,000. Right now we're at $31,000. So we have $19,000 still to raise to meet our match. And the goal is to meet that match by March 18th, which is the end of our winter term. So how you can help is if you know anybody else who would like to name a chair. I have to admit, this is where I'm not great. Like I'm good at doing this like in a defined meeting like this, but I happened to mention this just in like two other members of the choir who I just haven't seen in a while, that we've scheduled like a wine and cocktail thing on Zoom or whatever, mentioned it. I want a chair. I want to name a chair. Send me a link. So I'm just so thankful that this is the response in the community, and it's really exciting. And apparently it's a pretty easy sell. So if you have folks that you know who might want to buy a chair, and I'll talk to you about what those prices are or whatever in a second, I got a slide all on that. It's just, again, I'm really excited about the level of enthusiasm we've seen in the community over the last month. All right, next slide, please. So in other updates related to the Capitol project, these were the 6 outside entities that I mentioned that we had been working with pretty regularly over the last 4 years as we were preparing to launch all of this year. In the last month, we've had actually significant contact with all of them, and I wanted to provide you updates with them. So one, based on Impact Capital's recommendations, we are working we are in dialogue with the University of Washington right now on joint research, particularly in one area, using their ethics review council for study design. And what that means is, before we launch Memory Care Choir, what sort of metrics do we want to be measuring? Like right now, for example, a good example right now is I want to measure cortisol levels and immunoglobulin A levels, both before and after, and they're easily measured in a saliva test. So what those tell me is how much agitation is projected to go down based on the stress hormone cortisol going down. And immunoglobulin A levels show us how much your immune system has grown over the course of a session. I know that in a choir rehearsal, there are significant improvements before and after 1 hour of group singing in a choir rehearsal on both of those. We expect to see the same kind of metrics in those. We're also using more effective metrics that are instruments that measure depression, anxiety, things like that in a tablet-based way. But we'll be getting advice on UW on the most ethical way to implement that and to partner with those sites. So that's really exciting. They don't have a partner for applied research in community music. So that could build a really long-term relationship, which is great. Petros Partners, which is the finance lead I was talking to you about. They're a national organization based in Austin, but we're working with somebody here locally based in Lake Oswego in Portland. They have officially joined our project to take the lead on pro forma development and finance. And that just brings decades of experience on projects like this and fund development to our management team, which is really, really great. I'll share also, they're really so excited about this. They've deferred their fee and are kind of working until they raise the $80 million we need, which is very exciting, and quite the gesture of faith in the project. We resume work tomorrow with Rice Fergus Miller, our architect firm, to outline the steps that would be involved in turning the site study into an actual set of building plans once we have land that we've acquired, and what else might be required. And this is not turning on the switch and having the plans built, because we can't do that yet, but it does mean I need to figure out like what are those steps so that we can appropriately plan, schedule, and budget and inform the work of the land acquisition team. So I'm excited to be moving forward there. They also drove that meeting. They proactively reached out 2 weeks ago because they wanted to make sure they had room on their schedule for us if we needed it sometime this year, which is great and shows a measurement of how invested they are in the project. Also, the Child Care Action Council folks reached out to us 2 weeks ago, and we've had a couple of exciting meetings with them in the last week. If you don't know the Child Care Action Council, they're the coordinating agency for all of the ECAP early childhood programs on the Olympic Peninsula and in Grays Harbor, as well as hosting programs like their Kaleidoscope Playtimes for early childhood development, Parents as Teachers program for early childhood development. And they want to integrate our Sound Scholar program in all of those programs, and they want to pay us for it. So we're really excited about that. That's coming together right now. As we were finishing that meeting, and I actually, because she's here, I need to shout out to Heidi. Heidi, thank you so much. You built that connection by inviting me to participate on the Child Care Task Force last year. And so, yeah, thank you so much for that. That has paid so many dividends. So they were also really excited to hear about our plans to actually develop a child care center here in Mason County. In fact, the director of their ECAP program used these exact words, that Mason County is a child care desert. And so they want to not only partner with us, but they were aggressive about wanting to support us in securing ELF grant funds. And what an ELF grant is, another Department of Commerce funds, that's early learning facility grants. And that's another, well, I don't know what the amounts are there because they're just coming out of their current cycle and making those announcements. But I can tell you that in the last round, there were $30 million distributed across 11 organizations. So that could be a significant help for us in terms of what we want to build here. Innovative Education Solutions is also back on board to help us right size. I mentioned when I showcased the initial site studies that we knew the footprint of the Child Care Center was going to be changing and probably increasing based on what we've learned now about not only the need in the county, but what space we need for the two cohorts we really want to serve, which is from 6 weeks of age through age 2, and then from 2 to 5. And there are very different footprints and ratios for both of those groups. But there's a lot of excitement about that. And so that's coming together. The Rice Fergus Miller team has been in touch with the Innovative Education Solutions folks. So that team is all coming together so we can right size that. And then lastly, I just want to point out that our finance lead from Petros Partners, has a really strong working relationship with our friends at Impact Capital. And we'll be regrouping with them in the next 30 days because we'll be ready at that point to discuss Catalyst funding, which is the bucket of funding that they refer to for organizations exactly at our phase of development. We've got our site studies, we've got our feasibility, we have community stakeholders are supportive, and now we need money to pay for building plans and civil engineering and land acquisition and things like that. So we're at a particularly exciting phase of development. And again, this is moving. I'm so thrilled to see this moving at light speed. I hope I can keep up. Okay, so I had mentioned the first chair program. If you weren't here in the January program, I'm just going to run through this really quickly. So thank you, Amber. I didn't say next slide really quickly. But if you don't know what a first chair is, let me just review that they are the principals of each section of the orchestra, which means they're responsible for each section's unity and musicianship. And so what the first chair group we're putting together is a group of folks who will help us provide leadership throughout our community, each communicating as an insider, managing basically the sound and the melody about this vision and helping to ensure that news and information about our progress is delivered in the most orchestrated of ways. Each first chair member will receive a number of acknowledgements that the primary is a named chair or chairs in the proscenium theater. First chair members will receive advanced access to both individual and season tickets, including the option to reserve their named chairs for their chosen performances. It costs $1,000 to name one chair, which would be on the orchestra aisle, and $5,000 to name 4 chairs, which would be orchestra center. And I hope you or your business will consider it if you already haven't jumped in. And in my thank you email for attending tomorrow, there'll be a link to follow up if you want more information or want to follow through on that. And again, as this is the first one, we'll be hosting regular first chair events throughout this capital campaign to keep the folks that have invested their time and energy into this updated on everything that we're doing and how things are coming together. So the next of these will be, let's go ahead and go to the next slide. Well, actually, here, the next of these will be probably the first week of March. I haven't set that date yet because we have 2 other March dates and I don't want to overwhelm people. So there are 4 things I just sort of want to ask. And again, these will all be contact information, links, all of this will be in my follow-up thank you email tomorrow. So that said, please help us advocate. Please contact Drew McEwen, Dan Griffey, and Tim Sheldon and let them know you support Great Bend and their work. Thank them for supporting Building for the Arts and let them know we are going to be coming after an ELF grant on the next cycle. And again, I'll provide some coaching about that in that email and some text for that. Help us evangelize what we're doing. So I am shocked because I hate listening to myself and watching myself. But the recording of our January 20th little house party event has really gotten some play. So that is available if you want to share the foundational stuff with all of the renderings and all of the details there. Also, we have brief little videos. We have a 7-minute video on music as a natural resource and why this is such a good fit for Mason County at this time. We got a 4-minute video on how music builds strong families and a 4-minute video on how music builds strong economies. If that helps you evangelize whatever, or if you think of something else, we'll build it. If it's helpful, we've already had this request from a couple of folks, so I want to say we're ready. If you want to request a virtual house party that you host, rather than inviting people to the next first chair event, if you have a smaller group of 3 or 4 people that hey, Matthew, would you do your dog and pony show for this group of people I want to introduce to this? The answer is going to be yes, absolutely. Just reach out. Anything that helps us meet our first chair match in particular over the next several weeks would be really great. And I also want to point out our full spring class schedule is up on our website right now. And it's really coming together really well. I'm very excited about it. We will be, before you even ask, we will be repeating Family Ukulele. That's been our runaway hit this winter term. And so that's already on the schedule for next term. And I have to say, it's been way more fun than I thought in my family as well. So I don't know if you can hear it, but Eric was just upstairs practicing. So, so the next thing I want to ask is for you to save some dates. Again, there's that March 1st lunch and listen. There's a Facebook event. It's on my page. It's on the Great Bend page. come to that or help us spread the word about that. And then March 18th will be our end of term recital. And that's another little half-hour event, but it's where you really get to see how our classes work and what the kids are working on. That's also why it's our match deadline. So there'll be some hoopla about that. We probably will also do a first chair event update, but I'm hoping to have some other news I can share with you. And so I will schedule that as soon as I can in terms of having that other news. And then the last thing I want to ask is, I just noticed yesterday that a ton of so the two events that we had in January had about 60 people who have participated in them. Of the 60 people who have participated in them, maybe 10 had liked our Facebook page and followed us on Instagram. So, and it makes sense because I never remember to say it. So I just want to say, we're doing a great job on social media. Thank God, because I have millennials who are helping me with that. So please follow us and like us on Facebook. So with that, that's the end of my Dog and Pony Show. I'm right at my half-hour mark, which is great. I do have, for anybody who hasn't seen them, also all of the renderings, if you want, or if there's questions or discussions, anything you want to go through or go back and review from January. I'm done with my racing super fast talking part. Thoughts, feedback, questions, discussion?
I have a quick piece of feedback, Matthew. I love the Dog and Pony Show. I love sitting and watching and listening to you because you're so passionate and so bright, and it's just exciting to watch you get behind anything. But I'm really excited for this. I would love to get in touch and see some of those renderings.
Oh, absolutely.
We can take that offline, but I just wanted to put that out there for sure. I want to see those.
Absolutely, absolutely. Just to give you a sense, actually, Amber, can you fast forward to the floor plan part? Just to give Billy a sense of the size. So the campus we're looking at, the campus design we're looking at, it would be a minimum of 40 acres. We're hoping for about 100 acres. And you can see, let's go to the next one. Yeah. So the orange building is about a 9,000 square foot early childhood childcare facility. The dark, and we think that'll probably grow to closer to 15 to 16,000 square foot. The dark blue is a community music center with a digital music lab, classrooms, individual and group practice rooms, a student lounge with cafeteria, catering kitchen, instrument storage, instrument repair shop, instrument rental facility, choir robe storage, music library. I think I've covered it all. And an atrium and a lot of space for kids. Like my favorite thing in grad school was like finding the empty stairwell with 3 other singers and doing some barbershop or something like that. That was a big part of the design intention as well. The light blue area on top is a 100-seat recital hall. And that's a rendering we have to show because it's my favorite part of the campus. The yellow is our administrative building, that's offices. And then the cerulean blue on the left is our 500-seat proscenium. And that is a full proscenium theater, which means we have a pit and we can fly in set pieces. But additionally, it's being designed to be a state-of-the-art live stream center. And so let's just quickly flip through them, Amber, so that I can talk. So that's one set of renderings. So that's on the right is the childcare center. And you can see there's going to be a lot of glazing and a lot of window because we really want, for example, in this example, the little kids in the childcare center to be able to look across their play area and see what the bigger kids are doing in the community music center. That's intentional, both in terms of we looked at, should this be one building on one floor? Should this be one building on 2 floors? We went with a distributed campus because one, it helps us with soundproofing, but we really wanted to design green spaces that not only divided things that way, but also connected them. And you'll see that in a lot of places. So in between these 2 buildings is a musically informed play area. Next slide, Amber. I'm always happy to show these off. So this is the other side. So this to the left now is the glazing looking into the student lounge in the community music center. On the right immediately is our admin building. To the far right ahead is the proscenium theater. Next slide. This is the recital hall. This has been based on best practices recently designed by both Tanglewood in New England and by our friends at Icicle Creek in Leavenworth, and meant to take advantage. We don't know where it's going to be, but we know it's going to be in Mason County. So it's going to be in a spectacularly beautiful location because it's Mason County. You can't get away from it. Spectacularly beautiful. And again, and this is designed also to help us with our sustainability model, because we hope if we can find the right site that this will also be a wedding venue. And then next slide, Amber. And then this is the lobby and community space of the proscenium. We chose not to show the proscenium itself in this because it's a proscenium theater. It's a big fancy black box. But you can see the theme of glazing continues here. We have our wall of achievements there on the left. You can see there's a cocktail bar there. One of 3 kitchens that are on the campus are right here, but it's designed again to really facilitate connection and provide lots of opportunities for people to hang out and make music. So, and those are our 4 principal renderings. But I'd be still happy to follow up and do a one-on-one, Billy. Happy to.
I'll get in touch. These
Terrific.
are absolutely gorgeous. So thank you for sharing those.
Thank you. And thank you to Rice Fergus Miller. I'll tell you, I don't think I mentioned, there's a backstory there. You know, Steve Rice and I have had a connection for the better part of 12 years, independent from his own connection to Eric. In fact, Eric had a connection with Steve. I had a connection with Steve. Steve didn't know we were married for the longest time. And then, and my connection was primarily musical based on his work in Bremerton. And he hosted, the first time I was the featured soloist for the Bremerton Symphony, they had just finished their new loft space in Bremerton and they hosted the after party. And that was the first time that I met him. And then I was briefly the executive director of the Bremerton Symphony. And so principal sponsor, got to know him then. And then it was a fluke. Eric got this job out on Key Peninsula designing the state-of-the-art assisted living facility in a really creative, artistic way. And I knew from work that Eric had done with Steve Rice when he was at Harmony Hill, that Steve's passion was wanting an opportunity to do something in Mason County. He loves this community. And 2, that he's really passionate, not just about building design, but campus design. He believes the experience begins when you first enter the property. And I completely agree. And if we were going to do this whole project, I wanted it to be spectacularly beautiful and a reason to come visit, regardless of whether or not there was a program or an event happening there. And so that said, we're going to have this thing really scheduled with a world-class jazz series, a world-class folk series, a world-class speaker series, our own musicals, opera, theater. It'll be perfect for choral orchestral stuff. That is the stuff that I love to conduct the most. So anyway, so that's the background there. And Steve's really excited. If you know anything about Steve Rice, you know, there's a lot of hoopla last December because he retired as the final of the 3 principals of Rice Fergus Miller over the course of the last couple of years. However, he is keeping his foot in the water with us. So I'm really excited about that. But he was here in December as a surprise at our front door, dropping off a couple of bottles of wine to his 2 favorite clients and his 2 favorite projects in his career. So really excited. So again, so how beautiful it is, that is the intentionality of his team. And I'll tell you, his team is amazing. We had our first meeting right about a year ago, right about right now to start the site study. It took 6 months. In that first meeting, I was using some terms and Steve was like, I gotta ask, do you have an architectural background? And I was like, well, I have to admit, like my first term as an undergraduate, I was an architecture student. And Steve was like, wait, you started as an architecture student and you ended up as a musician. I was like, uh-huh. And he's like, okay, stop. There were 5 architects on the call. He was like, all the architects on this call who started as a music student and ended up as an architecture student, raise your hand. And they all raised their hands. And so, I mean, it's just been a match made in heaven in terms of everybody getting the mission and the vision and the importance of music as a community development tool. Next question. Next set of comments. Colleen.
So we had talked about this before about our newly housed residents and what the benefit of music therapy would be. I know you didn't mention that you're specifically geared, but some of the therapeutic benefits of it as it relates to depression and also as it
And
relates to,
trauma.
yeah.
Trauma.
So I just want to put that little seed in your mind that if you are wanting to incorporate our residents into your program, I would be
Definitely.
right there
Definitely.
to
Yeah.
coordinate that. So
Definitely. And in fact, I'll share with you. I haven't. I don't know. I'm not even sure if I think I have shared this with the board. I and another member of our team, Jennifer LeCaptain, were both invited to participate in this cohort with, we're 2 of 50 hand-picked teaching artists across North America as part of this Teaching Artist Training Institute. And so every other Monday, we have a guest lecturer on something that's meant to move our teaching artist practice forward. We're all El Sistema-based educators. This is only for El Sistema music educators. And then the 2 weeks later on the Friday, we have a lab where we're exploring and doing exercise on how we're going to apply this. 2 weeks ago, the lecture was eliminating shame-based teaching methods from your automatic sort of gotcha. And in music, that's particularly challenging, right? Because like the automatic thing is you're going to give the kid who gets it the easiest the solo. And that automatically builds in some shame for everybody else. So how do we diffuse that? I mean, and the leading thinkers, the professor from Penn State who's doing the research, I mean, it was mind blowing, that lecture. This 2-week cycle we're in, trauma-informed teaching methods. And it was just like half of us were in tears on Monday. It was so powerful. So yeah, we're really, really ready. Again, I'm not giving myself permission to think about in-person music yet because it's not quite time yet, but it's soon. In the next 60 days, we'll be ready to resume. The next 60 days, we're working through the permutations on that now. But thank you for renewing the interest because yeah, I personally, my doctoral research has several pockets of these are the exemplary examples of how therapeutic music works in these settings. One is prisons, one is homeless, and the third is vets. And the vets is the only area where I've actually had an opportunity to apply it when I was executive director of Choral Arts Northwest in Seattle. So there's a whole other conversation we get to have about that.
And the Trauma Research Foundation actually has done research around those other 2 bodies. They've done it with police and they've done it around veterans, but they have not done it around homeless. But I expect that it's shortly coming because those are the 3 top population for trauma. So,
and again, like for all of those, like for you, you need a social solution for those social problems.
Correct.
Without some sort of mechanism to make people feel like they belong and are wanted and are understood, all you can ever do is mitigate and band-aid. And those mitigation factors are really important, but you can't get at the root and start healing without some sort of engagement at that level. And this kind of engagement, there are other modalities to do that, but they're all really expensive. A community choir is cheap and it gets more bang for the buck. And so that's the other big message that I want to put out there is that the communities are struggling with these issues all over the place. And the research is sitting there on shelves where here's a really accessible, really inexpensive solution to get at the root of the problem, but there's no connection between those dissertation writers and county commissioners and community leaders. That's the opportunity for Great Bend to serve this entire country in a nutshell right there.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else for the good of the order? Thank you so much for coming.
Matthew, I don't have so much of a question as a comment of, it's been interesting watching you for the past decade plus and seeing the dream bigs that you've come up with and going through some trying times and getting told no and feeling like you lost everything and starting over again and seeing where you're at right now and the dreams that you're dreaming for Mason County. Yeah, I always knew that you had it in you. I didn't know that you had it in you to this extent, which is really exciting. So thank you. Thank you for keeping Mason County home and for continuing to push for greatness for everybody that needs it. And particularly the youth and the elderly and the people that really can connect through music. You have a beautiful gift and I'm just so thankful that in the manner in which you're sharing it.
Thank you. That came up in the January 20th meeting as well. And I just want to really reinforce, like, I've been here. I don't want to do the math anymore because it's hard, and it's double digits. And I'm a singer. Singers are famous for not being able to count. But that said, this is the only place that's ever felt like home. I've been here for well over 2 decades now, and like, this is home. And I raised my little boy here because it's so magical. This community, and again, I've had so many opportunities, particularly since our Carnegie Hall debut, like colleagues of mine around the country, like, how do you get these opportunities? Like, how does this happen? And I'm a really good conductor, but I know a lot of other really, really good conductors that don't get these opportunities. And the difference is this community. The community has always risen to meet me. And I am so grateful for that. I find that really humbling, that I can put something out there like this and the community goes, oh, well, that would be cool. Yeah, let's take a few steps down this path with him. And that's always been the response. And I'm humbled and so grateful for that. So now I need to get the word out because, again, choir is going to be resuming soon. And it's been February 25th will be 2 years since we've had an in-person rehearsal. And so that community has been really shattered by the pandemic. And I don't know who will be coming back. I don't know who my choir is anymore, both the children's choir or the adult choir. So I'm going into active recruitment mode shortly soon. So help us spread the word about that as well. And if you don't know, my choirs are non-audition. Everybody is welcome. I don't believe in tone deafness. And I would say my track record kind of proves I'm right there. There, I'll get a little prideful. I don't believe in tone deafness. You should come participate if you sing in the shower.
Do you want to ask him something?
Say, Matthew,
Yeah, Dave.
Dave's behind me.
there is an individual that has retired from national radio syndication. He's now on with Stanford about dementia.
Mm.
And he has been fighting the drug companies, and that's for another telephone call, personal, regarding drug companies. But as you probably know, they're trying to push Medicare to accept a $55,000 a year medicine for dementia. And this man of means who is retired is fighting that, because he believes there's other ways to fight dementia. And I think if I can locate him through the grapevine, I will try to set up a telephone call between the two of you.
Wonderful.
Because as I said, this man has means, he also has influence. And I believe that a lot of things like you're talking about can be accomplished, and it has nothing to do with drugs.
You're exactly right. And so there are two elements to that I can speak to. One is, and I just came across a really great visualization of it. Music is the only thing. Listening to music comes close, but making music, even if you're just humming, is the only thing that lights up literally every area of the brain. And so when you've done that, so dementia by definition, right? Like you can't go in through the front door to get it to a memory anymore. That front door access is now closed. But if you light up all the areas of the brain, suddenly you can come in through the side door and the back door. And that's the short story about why there are suddenly windows of lucidity that open back up. But the other element of that is not just in terms of you're lighting up all the hardwiring and sort of creating alternate paths, which again is why we think on demand that could be provided for a half hour daily rather than weekly would be powerful. But the other thing that happens, particularly in a song, in a group voice environment, is flow. And flow is the technical term for when you're having so much fun, you lose track of time. That's a specific psychological mental state principle. And the evidence over the last 25 years has really shown that, one, that we are flow-seeking creatures because it's sort of a recalibration of everything. You feel better after it. And there are a bunch of recalibrations that happen. And the easiest way to access flow, and it's been documented 6 days a Sunday by Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, love that name, who is the lead researcher on flow, that the easiest place to access it is in the choir room. And it's great because there are aspects of that you can't just have it by doing something fun. You have to be doing something fun in a supportive environment, just 1 inch outside of your comfort zone. So just a little bit ahead that's calling you forward to the maximum capability of your skill. When you can create all those, and again, it's the easiest for choir directors. A big chunk of my dissertation is about dudes, choir directors. We get this for free, and this is a powerful benefit. And the most powerful benefit of it is that it creates intrinsic motivation, which is the gold standard in education. There are whole books written about how do teachers create intrinsic motivation in their students, because those really exciting teachers that do that turn you onto the subject and make you want to learn more, those are the kids that really succeed, right? So regardless of the subject area. And so if you can create intrinsic motivation, you're good to go. And the most effective way to do that is through flow. And it also has a slew of community development implements, but I really think that flow has a direct access as well on lucidity and dementia. It can't not, because there are so many other recalibration effects. It resets anxiety and depression in sort of comparable ways to what we're sort of discovering about hallucinogenics right now in microdoses, to sort of rewire things and make you less vulnerable to it. So, I mean, it's really exciting time. And functional magnetic resonance imaging over the last 20 years is what's opened all these doors that a lot of us musicians knew, but even anthropologists now are formulating theories and writing books that language and music are not two separate things, and that they're fundamental aspects of the human psyche, and that music therefore has a bunch. We can't just think of it as an artistic and cultural practice. We kind of have to think of it almost as a wellness practice in a bunch of different ways. So it's an exciting time.
Well, if you're outside your comfort zone, you actually create more neurons. So,
yep, you do.
And dementia is just the opposite. It shuts them down.
Yeah, again, and there's the stimulation, and again, just the lack of agitation, which, right, the agitation is completely, you can completely understand why you'd be in an agitated state in that way. But the reduction in agitation and what that does in terms of workplace injuries reductions, and that cost savings alone. So that's going to be a part of our pricing model.
Thank you, Matthew.
Thank you. All right, have I worn you all out now? I'm sure I have.
I do have one more question, Matthew, and that's I know that we're to the advocacy and the introduction and such, but are you ready to like blast this from the mountaintops and start telling everybody, or is it more of a personal connection position?
We are ready.
Where are we at?
No, we're ready to talk about this as a project with the one proviso that, like, everybody wants to know where, and like we're just starting the land acquisition process. Oh, the only investment is it's got to be in Mason County. Mason County is the right home for this. So that's it, so, and we're formulating those criteria, but no, we're out of the closet now and we're ready to talk. We want to do this, and this is what the economic impacts will be for all of Mason County. In fact, I would love to partner with you in particular to talk about, I know one of the biggest issues we have in revitalizing Railroad and Coda Street is small businesses being able to compete against big box pressures. And cultural tourism is our one shot, lowest hanging apple solution for that, because people coming to visit, they're not going to want to go to Walmart to shop. They're going to want to see all the cool little places downtown. That is a way for us to balance those pressures and have both. And I think there's a whole story and a whole area of economic development that we can just focus on about that.
Good. Okay. So off this, I would like to sit down with you and talk through a couple of ideas. Deidre and I have been madly texting throughout this whole thing. We should do this. What about that? We should introduce them. Yeah. So
excellent. Thank you.
So, and I don't know if it was Amber or Hadley that was manning the let people in, but I disconnected like 5 times. And in between everything, they're like, "Oh, she's back. Oh, she's back." So
That's
Okay.
Amber. Amber's
Internet-
the wizard.
Internet
Thank
problems
you.
happen.
Yeah. All right. Well, again, thank you so much for spending a little time with me tonight. I'm so excited to be able to provide these updates. It's so exciting to see things moving forward. And again, thank you all for being so supportive. If you